Hello there, kia ora. One thing this government seems to think that they're good at is selective performative outrage. It's actually a really well-worn political technique, and it's used for a few reasons. The overarching theme of them, though, is all to control the narrative, what the public are talking about, and avoid accountability. During budget week, we saw this in action from the coalition a couple of times, dropping the C word in the House to distract from rushed changes to pay equity remediation processes and laws, and then focusing on a single story from a right-leaning news outlet on what Nicola Willis wore during the budget to sidestep feedback about the budget being less than useless to low and middle income earners, but incredibly beneficial to the wealthy, landlords and large businesses, all on the back of taking billions of dollars off women. The aim of this kind of performance is really simple. It's to shift the focus away from the policy and make it more emotional in terms of how you react. It brushes nuance under the rug in favor of getting emotional reactions because as humans, outrage feels urgent to us, while policy is boring and underwhelming. Downplaying actual negative media coverage is the flip side of this, and we've seen that this week with the response to comments that Chris Bishop made at the Aotearoa Music Awards. At the awards, Bishop was called out by legendary Kiwi artist Don McGlashan when Stan Walker did a performance that included Toi Tu Te Tiriti symbolism and imagery, and Bishop criticised the messaging of the performance. He admitted that himself to reporters when he said he should have been more careful articulating what he is thinking. And media have a really important role here to play. They can feed that plan to try and minimize outrage or feed into it for clicks. RNZ, for example, decided to run with this headline on the newly minted Deputy Prime Minister David Seymour's views. It says, Deputy PM David Seymour defends Chris Bishop's AMA outburst. It reads like Seymour is agreeing with Bishop's sentiment about the event. And if you watch the video of Seymour's press conference, he says he hasn't seen the performance. And you know what? If he had just left it at that, then everything would be fine and he wouldn't get a mention in this video. But then he goes on to say he's known Chris Bishop for years. He's a relatively mild-mannered individual. So maybe Bishop is right. But to get to that particular perspective, you need to watch the video because the write-up of the article instead says, quote, this being his opinion, might well be that, and based on what Chris saw in that moment, he was correct. It may be that people will agree with him. So the write-up actually comes across as more moderate, being about people's opinions, downplaying the issue. Then on Tuesday, when the Prime Minister was finally asked about it, he says that he's comfortable with Bishop's comments and didn't need to take it any further because Bishop had already admitted that he should have thought before he spoke, which, would be something that you hope any politician is aware of. But the actual interview on Radio New Zealand starts with Luxon laughing at being asked the question, downplaying it before also adding, listeners aren't losing sleep over what a politician sharing his opinion on some music was about. And there's the misdirect. Bishop didn't complain about the music, or Stan Walker's singing or performance. He complained about the way it was so political in its nature. And that was with a celebration of Māoridom. Music has always had a political nature. The Lament of Suma and is a 4,000-year-old poetic song about criticizing the ruling class that allowed the city to fall into ruin and how that was a moral failure to the people who lived there. Carmina Burana, O Fortuna, that's a millennium-old collection of hymns that are satirical protest songs about injustice. Even Chris Bishop's favourite local band, She Had, have a history of political themes in their music. Think You're So Free? That's a critique of global militarization. 5E is a critique of the Five Eyes surveillance network. Home Again is about displacement and globalization. La La Land is about consumerism and apathy. Same with My Mind's Sedate. So it seems politicization isn't the problem. It's the specific message itself, which is fiercely and proudly Māori. Stan Walker's response to the incident was to post a video of the part of the performance that Bishop was complaining about. It involves flags, haka, and a banner, and a crowd responding to it really positively. Fur Patrol, whose shirt Bishop was wearing, has come out against his comments. The music award managers have said his comments have no place there at all, and we all know how Don McGlashan felt about it. Well, except for those weird right-wing trolls who suddenly forgot who Don McGlashan was because he was criticizing somebody that they like, so they had to make a whole bunch of posts going, we had to Google who Don McGlashan was, like anybody cares. which all makes Bishop's alcohol-added rant seem even more pointed at the issue being about displaying Māori-centric messages of political unity. But if the spin machine can sort it out and make everyone believe that he really didn't dislike Stan Walker's music and make the public think that that was what the actual issue is, then everything would be fine. Until the next performative bit of outrage. Like the newly announced road cone hotline opening up, because that's clearly the biggest issue facing our country right now. By the way, I need to go and pay $12 for half a kilo of butter. Excuse me after this video. Anyway, performative outrage can be used to distract and downplay from poorly received messaging, and it can be used to amplify and anger and misdirect the public to neutralize backlash. As voters, we all need to be much more aware of how often politicians do this and make sure that they don't get away with it, because in the long run, that stops them being held accountable to voters. Hey, thanks for checking out today's video. Make sure you like, share, subscribe so you get more updates as we go along and deal with these guys for the rest of the year.